Hi, everyone. Welcome back. Right now, we've got part one. And over there, you're looking at Dr. Lawrence Brock. He has a Doctorate of Spiritual Science, and he holds a postgraduate degree in advanced ministerial counseling. He's an ordained minister, a certified Polarity Therapist, and a fully accredited advanced biofeedback practitioner. Lawrence had a near-death experience following a horrific car accident and tapped into an all-knowing and loving God. He came to 3 days later, spiritually awake, with abilities to heal. For over 35 years, Dr. Brock has had a successful practice as a counselor, energy healer, and spiritual intuit. Thank you for being here, Doctor. We'd love to hear your journey.
Thank you for having me. Yes, so it was many years ago. I was in my early 20s in 1976, and I had been living in Colorado. I live in New Jersey now, but I grew up in Westchester, New York, and I came back to visit my parents, who still lived in Rye Brook, New York, and heard about a party a friend from high school was having. And so I went to the party. I went with another friend of mine, and he actually drove me to the party. Or no, I took my own car to the party. We went in separate cars. I was there and I was drinking and smoking pot, those things that I do not do any of that stuff these days. And kind of as a way to go back the next day and flirt with the young lady who was having the party, I told her I was too high to drive and I was going to have my friend drive me home and leave my car there. And I almost all the way back to my parents' house, I realized my sister needed the car the next day. So I told my friend, you got to take me back to the party. He protested. I explained to him I was, overacting how high I was. This was in the 1970s. People didn't really think twice of drinking and driving back then. And so I went back to the party to get my car. I went in, I told the young lady that I was taking my car. And then I remember walking toward the door to leave the party. And I don't remember walking out the door or getting into my car. The next thing I remember was I was out of my body, floating in the white light and looking down. The car was smashed. And I used to have a picture of it, but I don't, it's somewhere. It was smashed so much, you would think the person died in there. And then my physical body was leaning against a tree, sitting there, and a police officer was crouching over me. I assume he pulled me out, but I never verified that part. So what happened was I fell asleep and crashed into a tree. The car was, like I said, really ruined, and there was this little tiny dent on the tree because I went back like the next day to look at it. So my experience was I wasn't going into the white light. I was in the white light. It was very feeling and knowing in a way that there wasn't much thinking involved at all. It felt wonderful. And all these years I've been fumbling to find the right words to describe it, because it's just like the nicest feeling on your skin. I think of a beautiful summer day, or sometimes, in a pool or a lake when the water's just the perfect temperature, that kind of feeling I felt, and just kind of connected to everything and knowing everything. And at the same time, not needing to know anything. Everything just made sense, and everything in the world seemed good. So I was in the white light. Behind me, there was a big circle of white light, a different shade. And then within that, there was a being of white light that looked like, a person, shape of a person, but just all white with a third shade of light radiating off of it. I didn't really know how to explain all this at the time. But the thing that was definitely very clear was right after, I don't even know how much time it was. The voice of the being behind me said, you have to go back. Your father wants you to stay. I knew the father he was talking about was God, not my physical father. So I went back in my body. Sometimes people say, did you have a choice of staying? I didn't, everything just seemed so perfect. Even the car smash, my head cracked open, all the dilemmas of, everything just seemed like, oh, just everything made sense. So I came to 3 days later in the hospital. Um, the way that I describe what happened came after kind of a another these great spiritual coincidences have happened in my life a lot since then. And one that happened that I never really dawned upon me how cool it was because I was living in Colorado. My mom kind of bribed me and convinced me. She bought me a new Jeep to move back to New York. And I was sitting in my apartment and someone knocked on the door and I got up to answer it. Nowadays, if someone knocks on my door and I don't know who it is, because the cell phones, I'm wondering what's going on. I normally don't answer it. I assume it's like an Amazon delivery. But um, so I answered the door, and this beautiful woman was there, and she started talking to me. She told me she was the sister of a friend of mine who I knew in Colorado, who I had mentioned my near-death experience to in a very vague kind of way. And she said, I heard some interesting things about you. I wanted to talk to you. And she introduced me to a Sufi sheikh who's a teacher, a Sufi teacher in the Mevlevi dervishes, who were the dervishes that follow the teachings of Jalaluddin Rumi, the whirling dervishes. And when he started to talk to me, right away, he started to talk to me about Mary, which actually Mary is a big thing in the Islamic religion. So Mary is mentioned more in the Quran than in the Bible, believe it or not. So, and she's considered like the perfect woman, how she was so open to God. And but when he talked about how open Mary was to God's love, it's like, whoa, that is what I experienced, the love and the feeling that I didn't know how to explain. He also talked about the ocean of divine love and benevolence. And that was, oh, that's the white light. It's like, and then he started to talk about Jesus, and I knew the being behind me was Jesus, and all the stuff in my mind, it started to make sense, and even feeling, and I started to see things energetically, and so that's how the explanation came. But it's this unending love, and I have learned some of it. I came back with some ability to heal, but it's become my mission in life to learn how to do that more. I started studying what happened after death. I studied with the Sufi sheikh and other teachers since then to really hone my skills and do these amazing, cool things, actually.
Wonderful. Thank you for sharing all of that. I would love to do a part two where we can get much more in depth because I already have lots of questions. And I know
Okay,
people who are
sure.
listening right now are going to have a lot of questions. Could I ask you how you help people, and I'll show your website. How can people reach out to you, your email, your website, things like that?
Yeah, everything is on my website. Probably the most, and on my website, you can make appointments directly with me. If you look in the menu, there's a way to do that. Um, So yeah, the three little lines in the upper left-hand corner, if you click on that, then down to schedule an appointment, you could do that directly. The best way to reach me is really to text me at 732-567-6388. The way I help people is, I guess, basically the energy, that love, that knowledge and healing energy that I experienced in my near-death experience. I know how to bring that present and hold it and bring that around people. I also, when I see people, it's like I see a line of their unfoldment or moving into health. And again, everything I do, it's kind of hard to put into words. So I do see like their lifeline or their line of how they can get to where they want to be, basically, which could include physical health, emotional health, accomplishing goals. It can be business things, relationships, all this stuff. And um, then there's sometimes I see things that are blocking that, so I can either use just that energy directly into that, or sometimes you need to get more information to kind of open up. It's like a key or a door there to open up the person's consciousness to let it in. So I do that a lot by talking and doing the energy work at the same time.
Wonderful. Okay, so we'll do a part two. And I always like to explain, sometimes I forget that the reason I started this channel, it took me 3 or 4 years
Yeah.
because I have a language similar to yours. I haven't had an NDE. I've had some spiritual things happen to me
Yeah.
that are pretty wild. I started finding friends that had similar stories to yours. And I thought, I'd like to share this. And I became a hypnotherapist. It's a 1-year program in California to help
Oh,
people
cool.
with anxiety, doom, which manifests in many different ways. And if you need to reach out to me for hypnotherapy, which I also do some nutrition tips and there's some guided meditation, there's a lot to it, but it's growthfactor.org@gmail.com. And I'll put Lawrence's information and my information in the description. Just use that there's a teeny little arrow where you could see more description. And I also do chapters. So if you see some words below when Lawrence is speaking, you can click on it. And if there's something interesting, you could just send that chapter to a friend. You could copy and paste it. So you'll see the chapters below. Anything
Oh,
else you
cool.
want to say, Lawrence, before we go into part two?
Uh, well, I encourage people to meditate and do journal writing and do the spiritual work. And I mean, my near-death experience was this phenomenal experience, and I've had other phenomenal experiences. So there's other ways besides having your body die to have those experiences. And I encourage everyone to honor their spiritual gifts and gifts they have in the world, and don't take those gifts for granted. Do the work to hone your skills, whatever that is, whatever your gift is, from cooking to writing to being a parent is the best skill probably, or doing healing, all of those things.
Thank you for sharing. And thank you everyone for being here. If you want to see more incredible stories like Dr. Brock's, you just click, it says growth factor. It's a lavender colored circle and you'll see much more of the videos. And then you just click above, it says video. So on my channel, you could just see the string of videos that pop up. And I have a few shorts that are 30 seconds to a minute to give you a little taste. And thank you for being here, everyone. Thank you, Dr. Brock, and come back
Thank
for
you.
part two.